Here on the Rant Couch, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about, you can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Kerbin, who says, "Rant about why Log Horizon Season 2 is better than Season 1. Well, I don't agree with that statement, but I can at least rant about why Season 2 is better than people seem to think it is. Log Horizon Season 2, it runs into a couple of issues. Particularly in the first half, the biggest issue is that they have two different books going at the same time. And the original books, they take place at the same time. They run concurrently. It made sense to do things this way, and that worked a lot in Season 1. Although, the parts of Season 1 that people complain the most about are the parts where the two books are fused in a similar way. However, in the case of Season 1, when you had the story of helping the people of the land, as well as the story of helping the kids to get better, these two stories kind of come to a head, and they both have their own like epic climaxes that happen one after another, in the anime, and they feed into each other. They both deal with the same event. The story of Akatsuki defending the home base in Akiba while Shiroi is out on the dungeon expedition, they have intersection in that both of them experience their first death, and they sort of meet up in the death place, I guess. There's parallels in their journeys that give it some meaning, but otherwise there just isn't enough meaning in like tying those two plots together, and not enough payoff at the end, because the Akatsuki story is kind of not the best. It's definitely like one of the weaker arcs of the story is the Akatsuki story at that part. I think it has elements that make it interesting, but it just kind of goes on too long. There's too much of it in the anime. I think that it would have been better served as just like a few episodes long arc, and then have the other thing be its own arc. Possibly, I don't know. The Shiroi part, though, is great. Like, the whole story of their expedition to the dungeon, the arc that the first villain of the light novel series has in that section is great. The new characters introduced are great. Overall, great arc. It has some of the most powerful moments in the show, for sure. Episode 10, the big speech that the leader of the guild gives, the sort of just rambling nature of it, I kind of like. I like that it's just this outpouring, this like insane gushing of this guy who has spent his whole life trying to kind of be like a tough guy online. Like, he's never really portrayed himself as like this emotional person who just suddenly like finally lets it all out to his people, and it resonates with them. It's a great scene on multiple levels. The second half, where we start following the kids, I know a lot of people complain about the kids' adventure because they just don't think it has like as much, I don't know, pomp and circumstance as the mainline story, but we learn a bunch of interesting things about those characters. They have a ton of development. I think they're all strong characters. I like the way that the revelations sort of come out about them. Roe 2, the alt account of Shiroi that's like come to life, interesting concept. The last arc does end up feeling like slightly rushed, I would say. But like, it resolves in an interesting place with Shiroi's former mentor finally getting to communicate with him for once. We learn more about her. There's just a lot of good stuff in Season 2. I mean, the artwork definitely isn't as good as the first season, and the first season was not like the best looking show of all time, but it had, I've praised its artwork plenty. Studio Dean could not live up to Studio Satellite in that regard. Big surprise. But, it's not like so bad as to be like terrible. It doesn't make the show worse necessarily, marginally so. I would say that there are issues in the pacing and there are issues in the art. Not every arc is as good as every other arc, but I still think it has so many of the high points and so much of what makes Log Horizon great that it still works. And, I guess I just said in 4.5 minutes what I've spent 6 months procrastinating on saying in more detail, but there you go.